this is Kermit the Frog.
Fascinating.
I'm Captain Kirk.
Magic is always there.
As
long as we keep looking for it.
Engage.
What does God need with a starship?
Thank you, love you. Mwah.
I protest. I am not a merry man.
Places, please. And here we go.
Down at Fraggle Rock.
Welcome, Doozers, Gorgs, Zinthies, and Things, to episode 137 of the MuppeTrek Podcast. I'm Steve.
I'm Jarman. I never heard of Zinthies. Wow. We're on a journey across the stars to compare and contrast the creative worlds of Jim Henson and Gene Roddenberry.
What started as reviews of The Muppet Show and Star Trek the original series has expanded into the stars and outer space. I said that wrong.
Hey, it sounded good. And this week we have Fraggle Rock episode, I Don't Care, and Star Trek The Next Generation episode, Measure of a Man. But before we talk about that, Steve, you know what I want to do? I want to rock.
That's right. There are all kinds of gems, jewels, and geodes in the world, many of which can be found in Fraggle Rock. And this week's gem is azurite. It is a deep purple, like vibrant purple gem that is basically a really extremely weathered version of that's found in copper ore deposits. So it's sort of like a byproduct found in copper ore deposits. And it is beautiful in color, but it transforms over time. As azurite is exposed to moisture, whether that's in stream beds or in the ground, it takes on more and more basically water, and it takes on more and more hydrogen atoms, and it changes with water molecules adding to it, and it changes color, and it actually becomes malachite, which I'm sure you've also heard of from video games.
Yeah.
So azurite becomes malachite as it gets exposed to water over like long periods of time of moisture.
Some of these deep purples are beautiful.
Just gorgeous. Researchers, those deep purples, once they're crushed up and added to oil or egg yolk, which was at the time, become these beautiful blue kind of pigments that were used in paints. And researchers did chemical analysis on hundreds of paintings and found that azurite was the source of, if you see blue in any medieval painting, azurite is what did it. There was like no other way to get blue pigment at the time.
That's cool.
So that's azurite, and that rocks.
That rocks.
I want to rock.
What's going down in Fraggle Rock? Well, what's up, Doc? Doc invents a newspaper retriever, which is an electronic steam-powered dog, and Sprocket is not thrilled. It chews through the papers as Doc tries to work out the kinks. Doc thinks he finally has it fixed. The dog brings back the paper, but God damn it, that robot dog did his crossword.
In pen.
Doc decides it's not worth it and releases the robo dog just into the wild. Like Optimus Prime with those dinosaurs at the end of that one Transformers film.
I never watched.
He was like, just run into the hills of China. But what's going down in Fraggle Rock? Boober is feeling lucky because he's got his lucky bottle cap that he got from the trash heap. He expands about all the things that he can do because of it, including going into outer space. But Boober loses the bottle cap while Wembley tries to convince him not to go, and he then ends up losing his nerve. Boober sings a sad song, Get Blue, which is apparently more often called Going Down the Road. As he ventures back to see the trash heap, she gives Boober a new blanket, assuring him that his deeds will be just as great as with the bottle cap, and he has his pet back in his step again. He heads back to the rock where they're rehearsing Moki's big play, and Boober finds out that he's playing the back half. He's playing the ass of the fire recharger, and he is not thrilled. He doesn't want to bend over. That was my favorite line. Moki then sees the blanket and is like, this would be a perfect costume for Red. And Boober's like, no, that's my... And she takes it anyway, puts it on Red. Wembley then hits him with a ladder. And then his blanket is immediately ruined by Red on some red paint that's on the set. Boober is just furious, and I loved it. He has been wronged. And then, literally on cue, Gobo produces Uncle Traveling Matt's postcard in a not-so-gentle segue. Moki says that she has booked the Hall of Justice because Boober is preparing a case against the other Fraggles because he demands justice. The Fraggles take an oath, which is not the ancient oath of the Fraggle, or the sacred oath of the Fraggle that we heard in the Convincing John episode. This is a different musical number-based oath where they swear to be fair and treat everybody like me. So treat everybody as themselves.
Golden rule.
The proceedings proceed with everyone making a mockery of court. Red is playing herself a damn fool, is what I wrote, when she spills ink on Boober's blanket, wronging him even further. Boober goes on to read his speech, which Wembley has used the first page of to clean up the ink, and Boober has had enough, and he just leaves. Moki and Red go to the trash heap to ask for advice on how to fix things with Boober, and Marjorie is busy playing the crossword. In the confusion, she gives the advice, the Q is silent. Tell him the Q is silent. Back in the Rock, Boober is just angrily trashing Doozer Constructions. Wembley begs him to stop and come back. Boober tosses Wembley out of his way into a huge construction that collapses on Wembley. He lays motionless.
Dead.
Back in the Rock, Red is trying to clean the blanket, which shrinks which has shrunk because she doesn't know what she's doing because Boober's the only one that knows how to do laundry. When Boober drags Wembley back screaming for help, they use the blanket as a cool washcloth now that it's washcloth size and use it to wet Wembley's head. Wembley wakes up. Everyone makes up. And that was going down in Fraggle Rock.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jarman, what did you think of this week's episode of Fraggle Rock?
I thought it was a great episode. It's really like the first fully Boober-centric episode, I feel like.
Absolutely.
Which I like that they had like a Junior Gorg episode. They have plenty of Gobo episodes. I think there was a Red episode, or Moki episode was in there too, where she becomes the leader of the group, you know. So it's finally Boober's turn. I thought his song was great. The one that they did a happy and sad version of it, which is kind of neat. And the Doc and Sprocket side story was cool, especially because I loved how sad Sprocket was that he was being replaced by this robot dog. It just made me like well up a little bit. I'm like, oh, look at Sprocket. He's losing his one job that he gets to do for Doc. You know, it's really kind of sad. And also, as soon as that "Swear to Be Fair" song started playing, I immediately felt like it felt like an original Muppet Show song. Like it just felt like very the way the tone of it, the vibe was very Muppet Show. It was very upbeat and fun.
I could hear it.
Yeah. And we had great moments of the trash heap, but there's no Gorgs this episode at all, which is fine because we just had a Gorg heavy episode last time. So I feel like we weren't missing out on too much there. But it had a great message of forgiveness. And at the end, you know, to learn to be more sensitive to what's important to your friends, you know, like don't just care about your stuff, but why is the blanket important to him? We should be more careful with our stuff and other people's things. And the first time I think we had a Fraggle being seriously injured, I think.
Yeah.
Like really bad. I was scared.
So. We've heard about implied Fraggle death before.
Yeah. And like sickness.
The terrible cave that like ate a guy and was never seen again.
That's
There's
true.
some implied death.
Yeah.
But this is probably the closest to real death we have got.
Wembley was just out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so far, this is like a top of the season episode for me. One of the top of the season for me. I really like this one a lot for some reason.
I agree. This one, I think for whatever reason, the writing just overall felt way better on this episode than some of the others. And Boober was given so much more leeway. And his dialogue, like in the court, and was just so good. Like someone wrote better dialogue for this episode for some reason.
And Boober often has, you know, like we said before, great vocabulary.
He has great one-liners.
Great one-liners, yeah.
So yeah, I absolutely agree. You know, we got 2 visits to the trash heap, which I don't think we've ever had happen before. Nope. We got no Gorgs. We got implied Gorg's Garden.
Right.
But no Gorgs. So that was maybe they could have thrown them in there.
That's what I was saying. Like last week we had that Gorg heavy episode. So it's like maybe okay we didn't have any Gorgs this time around. So
yeah. But the music was good. Going down the road. Was a fun one, and then when he's singing it upbeat later, made it even more fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. This one might not make top 3 for me, but you're right. It's towards the top of the pile.
Yeah, I'll have to look back because this will be a close contender for the top 3 so far.
Yeah,
but we have more to see, of course.
Absolutely. Well, what the hell were those silly creatures up to this week? Uncle Charlie Matt runs into a silly creature throwing a funny looking stick. When the silly creature throws it, it curves through the air and nearly comes back, but it gets frustrated, the silly creature, and it leaves the stick because it's mad at it. And Uncle Trapple Matt picks it up and gives it a toss, and it comes back and pummels him in the face. And of course, it is a boomerang that is being thrown. These were tools and weapons that are often associated with Aboriginal Australia. And while they're famous for being from the outback, they've been found in versions of boomerangs have been found in North America, ancient Europe, South America. So there either it was one initial tech that then spread through early human civilization, or it was a bunch of humans figured out the same thing. Well, most boomerangs that were actually used for hunting in day-to-day life for most of these cultures weren't the curved kind that come back. Most of them were sticks that were sort of streamlined and thrown and basically were designed to throw straight. So the idea is you could throw this stick 30 or 40 feet and really whack the shit out of a rabbit with it.
Yeah.
Or take a bird out of a tree with it. But very few of actually used ones are the ones that we think of when we think of boomerangs. Those ones are like for show or for play. So depictions of them being used in hunting were found as far back as 50,000-year-old rock paintings in Australia. Wow. And in 1992, a German astronaut took one out into space and conducted an experiment and confirmed that boomerangs can return in zero gravity.
That's crazy.
So it is not say purely, but it is dependent on its interaction with the air and not gravity itself.
Yeah, I always wondered if they actually worked, or it was kind of just like you had to be really good at it, but maybe it's just easier to do than I thought.
Yeah. I mean, if you ever really get a boomerang, it's easy to throw a boomerang and have it curve and go crazy. Getting it to come back to you is difficult.
That's a skill, yeah.
Yeah, that's the skill. But throwing a boomerang and having it zip in a big curve, anyway.
I can throw plenty of sticks, yeah.
Yeah, I can throw all sorts of sticks all sorts of ways.
I'm good at that.
Well, that's what those silly creatures were up to, boomerangs. So, Jeremy, what did you think was the best Muppeteering moment this week?
It's kind of a little of a cop-out, but just I always like a good group number. And that Swear to Be Fair number was great, just well choreographed, a lot of fun, really upbeat, and all the small moments with Boober getting pissed off and then them just, going at it. It was just a great group number, and I thought it was done really well. So it's my favorite Muppeteering moment.
I like these episodes. I chuckle at them, but I had a genuine laugh out loud moment in this episode, and that is very rare for me for Fraggle Rock. Mm-hmm. And so it's when Boober is dragging Wembley's lifeless body back to Fraggle Rock. He is crying for help. The last time we saw Wembley, he was like laying under a pile of rubble, not moving. He comes in and everyone rushes over to him. He's like, "Oh, we gotta help him." And Boober turns and you see Wembley's face where his tongue is out. And his eyes are little tiny dots, and it is the silliest, most non-threatening face ever. And the juxtaposition of like, I was like, man, this is the darkest moment in all of Fraggle Rock so far. And seeing that face, I legitimately laughed out loud and then had to rewind it to take the moment in again.
It was
so
funny
someone
to see.
made a brilliant comedic choice in this episode.
Just
I don't know if it was a writer. I don't know if it was a performer. Someone made a brilliant choice.
It was great. I love how they changed the faces like that. Even the eyes were changed and everything.
Yeah, just the little dot eyes are enough to communicate so much. But yeah, so Jarman, what happened on this week's episode of Star Trek The Next Generation?
Oh boy, we got Measure of a Man. So the Enterprise is at Starbase 173 for routine maintenance, but Picard is surprised to see his former lover there, Judge Advocate General Captain Philippa Louvois. It's a beautiful name.
What a bad name.
Their relationship ended. Beautiful name. The relationship ended when she had to prosecute Picard for a court-martial back when he was in the Stargazer. But then another surprise is waiting when a cyberneticist, that's a hard thing to say, Commander Bruce Maddox comes on board with an admiral, and they say that he is going to take data away to disassemble him so he can learn how to make an army of datas, basically. So they question Maddox further, and Picard and Data find out that this is not completely safe, and Maddox has no way of safely preserving Data's memories and life experience, just like data points and like text memory of what he's done. So Picard speaks with Data about it, and Data is prepared to resign from Starfleet so he doesn't have to go through with it. But Picard decides to contest it with Philippa and request a hearing. She says that since she is short-staffed on the starbase that she's on, Picard will have to represent Data, and then Riker, his first officer, will have to prosecute the case against him. Otherwise, she will let Maddox just take him. So they have to reluctantly agree. So they have their first session of the hearing, and Riker has to do his best, or she'll call off the whole thing. So Riker does his best to be impartial, even going so far as to show how he can show Data as just a machine, showing his inhuman strength, removing his hand, and then even demonstrating Data's off switch, which is like a no-no, it's like very personal. Picard so then goes to Guinan for advice, and she hints to him that creating an army of Datas will be just like creating an army of slaves, and that's immoral, and since Data is a sentient being. So Picard goes to the next session of the hearing and shows just how sentient and human-like Data is by showing that he keeps mementos and he made attachments among the crew. And he puts Maddox in the stand and shows that Data meets Maddox's own criteria for what is sentient life. So he must be given the choice to do this or not do it. So this persuades the judge, Philippa, and she rules that Data does not have to go with Maddox, and he is not property of Starfleet, but his own autonomous being. So Data, at the end of the hearing, then tells Maddox that he wishes him luck in his research, and he'll be around to help in whatever other ways he can besides being disassembled. And as he leaves, Maddox refers to Data as a he as opposed to an it for the first time, showing that he's made progress. Afterwards, the crew is having a party to celebrate Data's victory, but Riker is pouting in a corner. So Data approaches him and asks him to join the party, but Riker feels terrible for humiliation he put Data through at the trial. But Data tells him that he knows what a sacrifice Riker made to do this and how there was no other way to get to the trial to save him. So he thanks him for what he did. So this cheers Riker up and they join the party. It's a good time. So Steve, what do you think of this episode?
Okay, so some things I liked. Great, compelling premise. Data being forced not only to transfer, but then into the procedure as well. Then we got like Maddox, who was kind of the bad guy, kind of.
They didn't play him full evil, which is nice.
They didn't play him full evil. Like his goal was always altruistic. It's just means to get there were questionable. So in that way, he was compelling in that regard. We get a Tasha Yar holo, not once, but twice.
Yeah.
Maddox, I liked, was just smart enough and eager enough to seem feasible that he could pull off this work, but seemed just dumb enough to know that he probably couldn't. That was well balanced. There was that great Geordi and Data moment.
Oh, yeah.
Furthering their relationship. Great Riker moments and just well acted by Jonathan Frakes, too, for that matter, where he's looking through, he has them pull all of Data's schematics and he sees the on-off switch. And he has this moment where he's excited because he found exactly what he's looking for. And then you see him realize that he's suddenly sad because he found exactly what he was looking for.
It was a great moment. I love that.
Just well acted. And then Guinan appearance, and I loved her devil's advocate approach, kind of. If anything, she was trying to downplay the whole thing, and that's what made Picard realize what a big deal it was.
Yeah.
She's like, it wouldn't really be like slaves. And Picard's like, no, that's exactly what it would be.
And she gets a little smile. She's like, oh,
right.
Yeah, I don't know.
But like, but the fact that she literally like basically disagreed with him the whole time to get him to that point was just, well, once again, good writing.
She's always in the bag like that. Together. I love it so much.
And then, so this is 50-50, and the part of this is one of my dislikes. Seeing Picard in the courtroom was, in his final stand, when he's like questioning Maddox about what constitutes like sentience and all that kind of stuff, was great and well acted. But the first part in the court where it was Riker questioning and like Picard stands up and kind of looks like a buffoon felt bad. Like, it would have been better if Picard had seemed like he could defend himself, but just got outmaneuvered. But instead, Picard came off as like a not prepared fool.
I can see that a little
in that
bit.
first court scene. Like it felt like a scene in a movie where one guy is winning nonstop, just nonstop, and then the one guy takes a special pill, and then all of a sudden he's winning. You know, like they need to be back and forth, and that there wasn't back and forth. So dislikes. Do commanding officers all have law training? I liked the drama of Riker having to choose, but the assumption that both Riker and Picard suddenly have enough court procedure know-how to go into a regulated trial just seems incorrect.
I thought
that was nuts.
The whole shoehorn thing of like, she's like, well, I'm short staffed on this starbase, so you'll have to represent him, and Riker will have to, prosecute him. Like, what?
Since you're his senior officer, and then Riker as the second senior officer.
It's like he's obviously not impartial. He said he wasn't impartial. Like, you can't. That doesn't work in today's law society. It wouldn't work, 200 years in the future. That was the part I didn't like either. Yeah, it just was pushed. It was shoehorned in.
And then once again, what I said, it was just awful to watch Picard flop around in the first half of the hearing. And then this is just like procedural. Like, why, Judge Lady? What was her name? Judge Leroy or whatever? Philippa Leroy. It sucks that in her ruling on the record that presumably is going into like Starfleet archives, the judge in the case admitted she didn't understand anything of the subject matter and wasn't really competent to make this decision. And then makes the decision. It feels like that would be ripe for legal challenges down the line.
Welcome to American Congress.
Like, we've been talking about quantum mechanics and computers, and I don't understand any of it. So I'm going to go with my gut. Like,
that's like watching the hearings for like Facebook or like social media on TV, like on C-SPAN.
Yeah, where the old people don't know what to ask.
So if I plug in the Googles, is that reading my face technology? Like, what?
Does Google's know where I am right now? Well, that would depend on the things that you chose. No, you're not answering my question.
I'm going to make a law about this. Wait, you don't know anything about this? Whatever.
Can the Googles know where I am right now? Once again, we would have to look at your settings and see if you said for it to have. No, you're not answering the question.
Are you in my Wi-Fi? Are you in my Wi-Fi right now? But you're right.
So, yeah, it felt like that. It felt like it'd just be ripe for legal challenge with the way she phrased it.
Probably.
But overall, really solid, well-acted, well-written episode. We got to see some great expansive acting from a few people. And I think you mentioned this is the top of many people's heaps, and like I can absolutely get it. Same thing with the last one we watched.
Yeah, they both are pretty high for this season.
And the fact they're back to back is kind of incredible.
Yeah, it kind of sucks they're back to back. So they need to spread them out a little bit.
God damn it, save this one.
Yeah, I put the same things. A lot of points you made, just the acting and the Data showing his friendship with the crew and with Riker and Geordi and Picard, and why you can see how much he means to them through this episode, and just showing these important messages that Star Trek can put through. And I think it does it so well without any like big conflict or thing. Like the ship's not going to be destroyed. There's no aliens attacking or something. It's a small story, but important story. So I think it's a great one. 2 good episodes today.
Means we're due for a bomb.
Yup. But some Trek facts for this episode. The author of the script, Melinda Snodgrass, originally intended Data to swim in the opening scene to illustrate that theory and practice are quite different and that Data has difficulty processing this. The producers found it difficult to find a public swimming pool that they could use on their budget, and also had no time in their shooting schedule to find a way to maintain Data's makeup when he was swimming. So Snodgrass is then asked to find a different activity for the opening, coming up with the iconic poker games among the Enterprise crew, which they will continue after this episode. Glad she figured that out. Gene Roddenberry disliked the premise of this episode, arguing that there would be no lawyers in the 24th century. Sounds like a personal thing. But the writer, Melinda Snodgrass, convinced him that even if there were no crime, people would still have to settle civil disputes, negotiate contracts, etc. So Gene Roddenberry relented, and production of the episode went forward. So I think it was a good argument on her part. She's like, okay, I get it. There's no crime necessarily, but you still need lawyers for other things,
Right.
Data's storage capacity is stated by him to be 800 quadrillion bits. In current terms, this equates to 88.818 petabytes, which I didn't know was a thing, or more simply, 100,000 terabytes, which I can understand that. So his brain capacity is 100,000 terabytes, which is pretty cool. That's probably enough, right?
And he can process, he said 60 trillion things per second or something
like that,
nuts.
yeah.
Something absolutely asinine.
Starbase 173 is a reuse of the model for Regula 1 from Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. This Starbase design became known as the Regula 1 type after having also appeared earlier in the same season. It was in The Child as well, which is funny because even that was a repurpose of Regula of the... it's an upside-down redress of the orbital office complex from Star Trek I, the motion picture. So they basically used this thing 4 times, just flipped it around and turned it around and stuff.
All right, now paint it blue this time.
Perfect.
I think
Looks
people
great.
are going to notice. No, paint it blue.
Keep rolling. When Commander Riker is studying data schematics, one of the components listed is an oscillation overthruster. And this is a nod to a movie that Steven and I have reviewed for a Play on Nerds, The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension from 1984, in which the titular hero invented a device of the same name. So he invented the oscillation overthruster, and they threw it in the schematics for fun. The Daystrom Institute is first mentioned here in this episode, which would be a major reoccurring institution in the Star Trek franchise going forward. And it's probably in honor of Dr. Richard Daystrom, a character we saw in The Ultimate Computer back in the original series. It was significant at the time because he played a doctor, and he was a black actor playing him in 1968. Was a pretty big step in television, which is pretty cool. But yeah, Daystrom Institute, big thing going forward. Star Trek Picard, the 2020 series, reveals that in the time that has passed since these events, roughly 30 years, Bruce Maddox has figured out how to recreate the technology behind Data. So he finally did figure it out. And he's played by a different actor in the show who looks like this actor, but not the same actor. But yeah, so you'll see other androids in a later series because Bruce Maddox figured it out, which is kind of neat that they continue that.
Okay, cool. I actually had that mental question.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, is that? Yeah.
Did he figure it out? Eventually, yes.
Yeah.
So, Steve, what are our Trek connections this time around?
All right. Admiral Nakamura, who was right at the beginning of the episode, played by actor Clyde Kusatsu, who is a character actor who has an IMDb page a mile long.
Oh, yeah.
He's been acting forever and is always doing something. Well, he played the Japanese tanker skipper in 1998's Godzilla, in which Dr. Nico Tatopoulos is played by Matthew Broderick. And now this was an additional learn. In 2003, Jim Henson Studios, in co-op with MGM Productions, made a movie called Good Boy, ! About a talking dog that it's an alien that is sent to Earth to ask why the other dogs haven't taken over Earth.
Okay.
And this main dog was voiced by Matthew Broderick in this movie that I had never heard of, had no memory of, and it was apparently a Jim Henson Studios production.
Wow. Good boy.
Yeah, man. And the other one is Drag Captain Philippa Louvois. What a name. Played by actress Amanda McBroom, who was in one episode of the television show called Jigsaw John, about a special investigator for the LAPD who puts together puzzles, who was played by actor Jack Warden, who played Mr. Tarkanian, the newspaper chief in The Great Muppet Caper.
Oh, Jack Warden. Oh, I recognize
You
him.
want a raise?
Yep.
I'll give you a raise.
You'll recognize his face.
Yeah, you'll recognize Jack Warden from something. So yeah, those are my two Trek connections.
And of course they connect because it's the same episode, basically. I mean,
Basically.
both have characters not caring about the feelings of another character. The Judge and Bruce Maddox concerning Data, they don't care. He doesn't have feelings. He's a robot. and the other Fraggles concerning Boober and his poor
That's a
blanket.
great one.
Yeah.
Both feature court proceedings with Boober and his case against Red and the other Fraggles and the trial for Data's humanity.
That's true. I didn't think of that. Both feature a character that doesn't like the way things are going, so they decide to leave. Boober, when no one cares about his blanket, he gets the hell out of Dodge. And Data resigning from Starfleet when they want to disassemble him.
Oh, I like that. Both feature people with inexplicable attachment to objects. Boober with his bottle cap and blankie, and Data with the belongings that he decides to take to remind him of the crew.
Oh, that's the same third one I had, which is, inanimate objects bring them comfort.
I like that.
The lucky coin and the blanket and the book and Picard and the hollow message from Tasha Yar. That's really cute. But, yeah. Oh, God, what's that noise?
Transporter malfunction.
The noise almost didn't happen.
Malfunction.
So now it's time to the episode where we take one character from one episode and transport them on over to the other episode and vice versa. So what you got for us, Steve?
Trek to Rack this week, I'm going to bring over Maddox to replace Boober. Just moping around Fraggle Rock. Sad that he can't have his favorite thing. Data, he just can't have Data and he's sad about it. And then moping in court.
Sad
Everyone's
Maddox.
making fun of him. Just sad Maddox on Fraggle Rock.
Poor guy. Trek to Rock, I'm going to have Data replace the lucky blanket. He would not only be an object that lucky object robot that Boober needs, but he'd have a new friend that would do laundry with him. So that'd be fun.
Oh, that's true. And then Rock to Trek, bring over Boober to replace Data. Just constantly questioning his own self-worth and the people that he calls friends arguing over if he exists or not. Just
it's like a trial to see if Boober should stay alive. Poor Boober. Rock to Trek, I'd have the trash heap come over to replace the judge. Because I put her ruling would be completely nonsensical, arbitrary, but fair. She'd be like, whatever, Q is silent. Oh, and Q is silent. It would be a reference to Star Trek.
That's right. You almost turned into Christopher Walken there for a moment when you were doing the trash heap.
Q would be silent.
The Q is silent.
Wow.
The trash heap has spoken. Yeah.
Get out of here.
You heard him. Get out.
Well, with that brings us to the end of episode 137 of the MuppeTrek Podcast.
Join us next time for Fraggle Rock episode, Capture the Moon.
And Star Trek The Next Generation episode, The Dauphin.
So, from the lovers, the dreamers, and us.
Live long and prosper, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the MuppeTrek Podcast. Be sure to follow us on social media on Facebook and Twitter.
Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform.
This podcast has been brought to you by A Play on Nerds.